We'll wait for a couple more minutes before we start. It's 11 o'clock, but if you guys can see my screen, just type yes in the chat so I know that it's working. Okay. Alright, guys, I'm gonna start. Okay, so before we start, everyone just open up a Replit. We just create a new one, or you can use the one that you did last class. But yeah, just you can empty it, or you can just start from where you are. But just create a new Replit. If you want to create a new one, you just click the create button over here, create, and then select Python, and then you just click create Replit. They'll just create a random title for you. That's just how they do it. All right. So once everyone created a new Replit, just say yes in the chat, and I'll continue with our lecture. Let me... Okay. All right. Now, so I said last class that we'll start with a review. So here's a couple. So last class we learned data types. So we learned strings, integers, floats, booleans. So what I want you guys to do is let's go one by one. What do you guys think would happen if I just enter this line into the code here? Basically what it's saying is what is the type of this uh set of numbers right here. Do you think it's a string, integer, float, boolean? Type your answer in the chat. We'll check it in Replit in a second after a couple of you guess what you guys think it is. So all we're doing is just what the type of this here is. So let me check the chat. Ooh. Float. One person said float. Float. Yep. So yeah, that is a float, and a float is just a decimal point number. So if you run it, it just says class float. So let's go through these quickly. This one right here, it should be pretty easy. When we write it, it's just an integer, 87. There's no decimal. There's nothing. Run. So the first one was a float. Second one was an integer. Now, third one, what do you guys think this is? This is print type of 9.0. 9 is just an integer, but it has a 0.0. So what do you guys think would print? An int or a float? Just type what you guys think would happen in the chat. It's just a point. All that's different from this That's 9, and there's a point out. Do you think that would change anything? Do you think that would make it a float, or do you think it'd still be an integer just because it's 9? Just write in the chat what you guys think. Float, 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 float. Yep, that's right. The 9.0 will still be a float just because of the decimal. So here you can see class float. Yep. And then next one, so this one here, print type of 9. So the thing here is that there's quotation marks. So what do you guys think would happen? It's still 9. There's still like a 9 here. So will it be an integer, or do you think the quotation marks will change anything? What type do you think this line would print? What type is this character right here? String, 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 exactly. So yeah, the quotation marks make it into a string. So if we run that, the next one is string. And then here, so the type of 9 greater than 5. So we learned that last class. It might like look weird. What is the type of like this comparing factor here? But Python does have a type for this. Print the type of 9 greater than 5. What do you guys think the type of this is? Boolean. Yep, exactly. Boolean, Boolean. Yes. So yeah, that is a Boolean. If we run it, it's short for bool. So yep, 9 greater than 5. You're comparing. You're seeing if it's true or false. If we just print 9 greater than 5, it'll print true, and true is a Boolean. So yeah, there you go. And the last one, a simple one, the type of just hello, and that's very easy. What do you guys think that is? Print type of hello. String. Yep. And that's basically what we learned last class. It was mainly just data types and variables. Variables, we'll get more into it this class, but I just wanted to refresh your guys' memory on data types. So, all right. Okay, so today we're going to be doing comparison operators, if statements, if else statements, elif statements. So we'll go into it as we go. We learned comparison operators. Comparison operators are just greater than, less than. There's a whole set of them. There's less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and then not equal to. So let's go back here. So comparison operators. They compare two integers, floats, strings, or booleans. So an example is 3 greater than 2. And if we print 3 greater than 2, it will return true. And then if we print Python, the word Python is equal to the word snake, it will be false. Because for strings, they have to have the exact same letters in the exact same orders. We went over that last class as well. So, but the thing is, there is an error here. I did not catch this. There has to be 2 equal signs here. That's the comparison operator. One equal sign is just an assignment operator. That's different. You're just trying to assign like a variable to like a number or something like that. But if you actually want to use an equal sign in Python, you need a double equal sign. So over here, here's a list of comparison operators. There's less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to. So let's play around with it. So let's print. So we can do print 5 greater than 6. So that's gonna work. Okay, let me get rid of this. So there's print 5 greater than 6. There's print, we can do 5 less than 6. We can do 5 is equal to 9. You need to have a double equal sign for that. We can also do, for not equal to, it's basically, it's kind of weird syntax, but all it is an exclamation mark and then 1 equal sign. That's what a not equal to means. So 5 is not equal to 5. That's going to be false. It is equal to 5. So let's just run these 4 right here. So first one was false. 5 is greater than 6. That is false. Second one is 5 is less than 6. That is true. Then print 5 is equal to 9. That is false. 5 is not equal to 5. That is also false. If we change this one to 9, and then this one here to 5, 5 is equal to 5. That should be true. There you go. And then 5 is not equal to 9. That should also be true. So there's that. And then there's obviously 5 is greater than or equal to 5. So if we want to print that, that will print true as well, because it's greater than or equal to, and 5 is equal to 5. So if we run it, the last one was true. So let's go back. So we learned less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal to. So they're all just regular operators that we learned in normal math class. It's just in Python, except to the not equal to. Like we learned it, but in a regular math class, it was an equal sign with a slash in the middle, if you guys could remember. But here, you can't really put a slash through the equal sign, so it's just an exclamation mark and then an equal sign. That's how they do not equal to in Python. That's the syntax. And then, yeah, less than or equal to, it's just a less than sign, and then an equal to sign just right next to each other. Greater than or equal to is a greater than sign, and then equal right next to each other. It's really simple. And then equal to, and then an equal to is just two equals right next to each other, because one equals is an assignment. Like if we do name is equal to Rohit, we're assigning the variable name to Rohit. But then if we want to do name is equal to Rohit with two equal signs, then we're trying to see, is this word name the same as this word Rohit? Oops, I forgot to put it. And yeah, so that's the difference between these two lines right here. One equal sign is not the same as two equal signs. All right, so now let's go into if statements. If statements are just exactly what it stands for, if statement. We learned this in just like grammar. If something happens, then do this. So here are a couple examples. If 3 is greater than 2, then you want Python to print 3 is greater than 2. So let's play around with if statements. I like if statements, they're really fun, and you can really just, it avoids errors. So like, if I do if 3 is less, let's do if 3 is less than 2, then I want to print 3 is less than 2. So run. And is 3 less than 2? It's not. So that's why it didn't print anything. And it didn't give an error either. So if I change this to 1, and I want to print 1 is less than 2, then 1 is less than 2. It prints it. So basically, if statements, like, if it'll only print it if the condition is true. If it's false, then it'll just completely ignore whatever is indented underneath it. So the syntax for if statements is you write if, and then you write any condition you want. You can do blah, 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 blah. Oops, you can't obviously have a letter. So if 23838 blah, blah, blah is greater than 0, then whatever I write under here will print. And since that is greater than 0, I want to print that is correct. So if that is true, then I want to print that is correct, and it will return that is correct. So that's all an if statement is. If this condition is true, then print this. Now what if it was like false, right? So if I do if 9 is equal to 10, which is not right. So if 9 is equal to 10, then print that is correct. If it's not equal to 10, then it's not going to print anything. So run, and it just gives nothing. It's just blank. And that's basically if statements are. If it's true, then it'll print whatever is underneath it, whatever you indent. And if it's false, then it will not print anything. Let me just make sure, no questions. If you guys have any questions, just put them in the chat, and I'll just check on them periodically and just see if I can answer them. All right, so that's basically if statement. So here's another example. If the word Python is not equal to the word snake, then print yes, you have the right Python. And that Python is not equal to the word snake. They're different words, they have different letters. So if I were to put this into the code, it should print yes, you have the right Python. So let me just copy paste this and see what happens. There you go. And then so these are kind of different. You gotta manually change these quotation marks. All right, over here too. So I guess the quotation marks that you use on PowerPoint aren't the same. So now if we run it, yes, you have the right Python. It works perfectly because Python, the word, is not equal to, and also you don't need these parentheses. It's not like required. If I were to take them, you could put them just because it looks neater and it looks nicer. You're putting this whole condition in a parenthesis, but if I were to just remove that parentheses and remove this parentheses and then just run it, it'll still print the exact same thing. So you don't need it, but if you guys like parentheses and putting them around just to like organize it, then obviously feel free to do that. It'll make your code like much more readable. So yeah. You do need parentheses though for print statements. You can't just take out a parentheses. It's gonna, like, you see that red squiggly line under, it's not right syntax. You need parentheses. All right. So now there's else statements too. If something happens, you want to print this. But then if it doesn't, else print this. So let's go back to what we were doing before. So if 3 is less than 2, print yay. Okay? Oops. And now, but that 3 is not less than 2, so if we were to run it, it would print nothing. So then underneath, you put else print no. And I'll remember to put the quotations or you will get syntax errors. So now, how Python works is it goes to the first line, if 3 is less than 2. 3 is not less than 2, so completely ignore this line. Anything indented underneath the if statement, if it's false, then they don't care about it. They go to the next line, because if this is false, they go to the else statement. So if this is true, print this. Else, print this. So since it was false, it'll print whatever underneath is the else statement. So it'll print no. It'll completely ignore the yay. It'll just go straight to the no. So that's really helpful, because you can, if you want some, if this is true, you want to print something. If it's false, you want to print something else. So let's go right here. If 3 is equal to 2, print 3 is equal to 2. Else 3 is not equal to 2. So yeah, if we were to run this, it's going to obviously print 3 is not equal to 2, because it's not. So if 3 is equal to 2, you have to indent this print statement and make sure this else statement is aligned with this if, and then your print statements are just one indented under each else or if. So if 3 is equal to 2, print 3 is equal to 2. And again, these quotation marks, gotta put these ones in because it looks like they're not the same. There you go. So, and then if I were to run it, 3 is not equal to 2. And that's basically if and else statements. There's one more step in if and else statements though. Let me just make sure. Any questions? No questions? Alright, looks alright. So one more thing in if else statements is an Elif statement. An Elif is basically short for, let me write it in here. Elif is short for else if. So if you can see here, for if statements, you have to put a condition. You have to say if this, but for else, you don't need a condition, because you're basically basing off of this. If this is false, then you else do this. You don't need a condition. But then what if we do something like this? So if 5 is greater than 5, if 5 is greater than 5, print 5 is greater than 5. Else, if 5 is not greater than 5, print then 5. If 5 is not greater than 5, then 5 has to be less than 5. 5 is less than 5. Run. And if we do that, then what's going to print is 5 is less than 5. But the thing is, 5 is not less than 5. So in this type of context, you need an Elif statement. And an Elif is between an if and an else. And basically, Elif is the same exact thing as an else, but then you can put a condition in front of it. So Elif 5 is equal to 5, then print 5 is equal to 5. And the thing about yeah?
Sorry for the late.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, we're just going over if and else statements. I'll go over it again. So we're learning if statements are just here, let me start from the top again. So this will also be in a recording. I'm recording this entire thing, so if you miss anything, you can also go over it. But just to quickly go through it, it's just we're learning comparison operators and if statements. A comparison operator is just like simple math class. You learn greater than, you learn less than, you learned equal to in math class. So these are the whole entire list of comparison operators. And as we go, you'll learn more into it, but just if I have more time at the end, I'll help you individually. But there's a lot to get through this class, and there's also recording. So If you have any questions, I can help you with it later. But yeah, let's get back into it. So there's if we learned if statements. If a condition is true, then you want to print this line. If it's false, we learned the else statement, then you want to print the else line. And now we're learning elif statements. So an elif is just in between. So if 5 is greater than 5, print 5 is greater than 5. But that's not right. Elif, 5 is equal to 5. Print 5 is equal to 5. That's exactly what we want to do. So if we run it, 5 is equal to 5. And the thing about elif statements is, as soon as you hit the elif statement, and as soon as it's true, if Python is like, oh, that's true, it ignores everything underneath it, such as else statement. It'll print whatever is indented, but it'll just ignore the else statements, which is what we want. We don't want it to go to the else statement, and we don't want it to print both 5 is equal to 5 and 5 is less than 5. We only want it to print what is under the elif. So that's how Python works. If this part was true, then it would print this and ignore everything underneath it, like these parts. And then if it was false, it'll go to the next one, and you'd be like, is this true? Oh, it is true. Okay, I'll print this. And if this was false, then it will finally go to the else statement, and then it'll print this. So it's like an entire tree structure. You're trying to build one by one by one. If this is true, just print it. If it's false, go to the next one. If this is true, print that. If this is false, then go to the final one and then print that. And this will print if everything above it was false. So if it was like, um, here we'll go into examples in a bit. This part, logical operators, I taught about it last class. I just went over a little bit. I talked about and or. Returns true if both statements are true for and, because you just have to think about it. Cat and dog, or cat or dog. If do you want a cat and dog, it means let's say I want a cat and dog. That means you want both of them. If I want a cat or dog, you want one of them. So and means both statements are true, and then or is one of the statements is true. So if I were to do something like if um if let's say 5 is greater than 6, no, let's say if 5 is greater than 4, which is true, and 5 is also greater than 8, then print, I want to print true. And what will it print? It'll print nothing. Why will it print nothing? Because 5 is greater than 4. That is true. And 5 is greater than 8. 5 is not greater than 8. And since this is an and statement, both have to be true for it to pass and for it to go to the next print statement. So since this one right here is false, it's going to completely just ignore and be like, oops, this entire statement is false. Well, then we're not going to care about this print statement underneath. If I were to change this 8 to a 2, though, 5 is greater than 4, that's right. And 5 is greater than 2, that's also right. Then if we want it, it should print the true. Exactly. If we want to, if and the best thing about else statements here is, let's go back to the 8. So 5 is greater than 8, print true, else print false. And the thing about this is it is false. 5 is greater than 4 and 5 is greater than 8. That's not true. That's false. 5 is not greater than 8. So it should print false. And that's basically an if-else statement. If 5 is greater than 4 and 5 is greater than 8, print true, else print false. But as soon as we change this and to an or, 5 is greater than 4 or 5 is greater than 8. So 5 is greater than 8, that's false. 5 is not greater than 8, but 5 is greater than 4. And since we're using an or statement, only one of them have to be true for it to just pass. So if we were to run it now, it would be still true. Exactly. So if 5 is greater than 4 or 5 is greater than 8, print true. So that's basically and or. And is both of them have to be true, or is just one of them have to be true. All right. Let's go to, so we learned just simple comparison operators. Here's the list of comparison operators. Then we learned an if statement, we learned an else statement, and then we learned what goes in between an elif statement. And then we learned logical operators as well, and an or. And is if both of them are true, or is just one of the statements is true. All right, and here's an example. If name is equal to Python and 3 is greater than 2, then print 3 is greater than 2. Else print 3 is not greater than 2. So here, if we were to take that, put it, let's erase this and put it here. We have to make sure that the indent is all right, or we're gonna get an error. So it has to be an if, and then the print has to be indented, and then else, and then just one indent. This looks like there's two indents. So let's go all the way back and then just put one indent. So that's the right syntax. Looks like these two quotations here. So yeah, whenever I copy paste it from Python, it looks like the quotations are different than the quotations that Replit uses. So I'm gonna have to manually change them every single time, and that should be good enough. So here, why is there a squiggly line here? It's because name here is, there's no quotations around it. So they're like, here it says exactly undefined name of name. So what is name? So basically, let's put this down a bit, and over here, let's define name. Let's say name is, let's call name, we can call it exactly Python. If we call it exactly Python, then what will it do? It'll go into here, and see now the squiggly line is gone because now we have a definition for name. Name is Python. So now is name, double equal sign is basically asking, is this name over here, Python, equal to the same exact Python here? Yep, that's true. And is 3 greater than 2? Yep, that's also true. So now it's going to print 3 is greater than 2, and it'll completely ignore the else sign because it doesn't care. This entire statement is true, so all I'm going to care about is this right here. The else statement does not matter to me because this here is already true. So run it, then it's going to print 3 is greater than 2. But as soon as we change this name over here to, my name, Rohit, is Rohit the same as Python? It's not. The letters are different, the order is different, everything is different about Rohit to Python. And 3 is greater than 2. So 3 is greater than 2 though. That is true. But since there is an and statement here, this statement over here also has to be true. And since it is false, it's going to go to the else statement. It's going to be like, okay, this statement here is false. So I'm going to completely ignore this line right here and go to the else statement. And I'm just going to print whatever is under the else statement. And it's going to say 3 is not greater than 2. Even though 3 is, in mathematical terms, greater than 2, this statement is forcing us to go to the else statement. But what can we change about it? So if I were to run it, see, it's going to say 3 is not greater than 2. But all we have to do is just change one part of it and make it so it'll still print this, even though my name is Rohit, and even though Rohit is not equal to Python, and this statement's going to be false. If we just change this and to an or, then only one of these statements have to be true. And since 3 is greater than 2, it doesn't matter. This whole statement doesn't matter. If it's false, if it's true, it doesn't care. All it cares, if just one of the statement is true, then it'll print the line that's indented. So run, 3 is greater than 2. So even though Rohit is not equal to Python, the statement right here is false, this statement right here is true. 3 is greater than 2. So the or will make this statement print this. And that's basically a or and and. That's an example of how to use or and how to use and. Okay? So, yeah, that's logical operators. And so there is also a little more complex if statements. You can put an if statement inside another if statement. And let me show you how you can do that. So if, let's say we're trying to, let's use the input function that we learned in our first class, and let's input any number we want. So number is equal to input, and then enter a number, please. So enter a number. Make sure you put this in quotation marks. There you go. Enter a number. So if I were to run it, enter a number, and we can enter whatever number we want in this command prompt over here. So, and then if we enter it, nothing happens right now, but that's the first step. And now, so I taught you guys something last class, and there's the number that we're entering here is an integer. I mean, it's a string. It's not an integer. We want it to be an integer though, because like for example, if I were to just take this number and multiply it by 5, so let's print that number and multiply it by 5. So now let's run it. So enter a number. If I were to enter 9, we want it to return 45. But it's not going to return 45 because it thinks that this 9 over here is that 9, like how we talked about all the way over here. It thinks that it's a 9 with the quotation marks. That's what it thinks it is. So how do we change that? So if I were to run it now, so enter, it's going to print that 9 with quotation marks, and it's going to multiply that string 5 times. 99999, 5 times. But we want it to print 45. We want it to view this 9 as an integer. So we basically have to change this entire thing into an int. So right here, we put an int in front of it, and we just put parentheses around the whole thing, like that, just like that. And we basically did this thing called casting. We changed the entire data type of this whole entire line right here by taking this int and just putting parentheses around it, and it's basically just changing whatever's in it to an integer. So now if we run it, enter a number, 9, it thinks that 9 now is an integer because we casted it into an int. We put an int in front of it. So 9, now it will do 9 times 45. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you guys. I just wanted to show you that we have to put that in front of it because we want it to be an integer. And now let's go back into the nested if statement. So here what we could do is, so now we just want to enter a random number, and if that number is greater than 0, so basically we want it to be a positive number. We don't want it to be less than 0. So if it's greater than 0, then we go under it, and usually here we'd just be like print it is a positive number. But I'm trying to teach you guys about nested if. So instead of putting a print statement underneath it, we can put another if statement. So if the number is greater than 0, 9 is greater than 0, then it'll go to whatever's indented under it, and then it'll do whatever's here. So we'll put another if statement in here. If the number is greater than 0, it is, then you go under it. If it is, let's say, if number is less than 10, which 9 is also less than 10, then print the number is between 0 and 10, which it is. Because if it's greater than 0 and it's less than 10, then the number has to be between 0 and 10. So now let's run it. So if I run it, and if I enter a number like 5, it's going to do... am I doing something wrong here? Oh, I made a mistake here. If the number is not greater than 10, we want to do less than 10. Because if 5 is not greater than 10, so number is less than 10. So if we run it, enter a number, 5, the number is between 0 and 10, which is true. 5 is between 0 and 10. So that's how we can use nested if statements. If this one is true, then you go to the next one. And if this is true, then put another indent, and then you can print. And you can put even more if statements under this, and then put another if statement under this, and just keep on going like that. And you could just do that forever if you wanted to and make like something specific. But yeah, this is just the general idea of a nested if statement. You do if underneath if number is greater than 0, and then 5 is greater than 0, so go to the next one. If number is less than 10, 5 is less than 10, print the number is between 0 and 10. And if we were to run it and then put something like 11, though, 11 is greater than 0. So how about we put a print statement here? Print the number is positive. So now if we put 11 here, it's going to go to this first line, and it's going to say 11 is greater than 0. Let's print the number is positive. Then it'll go to the next if statement, because we have to do everything that's indented under the if statement if this if statement is true, and it is true. So first print the number is positive, then it'll go to this if number is less than 10. Is 11 less than 10? It is not. So it's just going to stop there, and all it's going to print is just this one line right here. So if I were to click enter, am I making an error? What did I do? Let me run it again. 11. The number is positive. There you go. So that's exactly, it won't print this though, because it's not between 0 and 10. It wasn't less than 10. It didn't pass this one condition right here. So, yeah, so if I were to do 5 will print the number is positive, 5 is positive, and the number is also between 0 and 10. So if I just print 5 and enter, it's going to print two statements. It's going to print both of them. It's going to print that, and then it's going to go to this if statement. It's going to be like, oh, that's also true. So let me print what's underneath that as well, and it's going to print that. And that's basically a nested if statement. It's just two if statements underneath each other, and you just can print things that are that are indented under any of them. You just have to make sure that the condition that you put is true. Let me just make sure you guys have no questions. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and I will get to them. So yeah, that's basically it. Today's class was basically if statements, and I have a lot of examples to make sure that you guys know if statements a lot by the time we finish this class. So let's go through the examples now. Let's do them together. So make sure you have your replit out, and we're gonna do it step by step. And you can do them with me. Make sure your syntax is right. If your syntax gets if there's an error with your syntax or you're getting an error, just make sure you look at mine. Make sure you don't like have like a quotation that you forgot. If you still can't figure out what you got wrong, just put your replit in the chat, and I'll just come and look at it. Um, so all right, let's go to the first one. So ask the user for a number and check that it is greater than 5. So we already did the first step with right here. This right here is already asking the user for a number. And for you guys that are right now typing it into your replit, make sure that you don't forget the int right here, because if you do, then you're not gonna it's gonna be a string and you want it to be an int. So now we can just put any number we want, like 9. Um, it does ask for a number. This would work, but it's gonna have an error because right now we want it to be an int. We're making it so that it's only an int. So run, you can only enter numbers in. So there you go. Now, so we asked the user for a number. We got this part done. We're done with that. Now we want to check if it is greater than 5. So that's our next step. So we have the number and we want to check if it is greater than 5. So if number is greater than 5, and that's how we check it with an if statement. We're just checking if the number is greater than 5. If the number is greater than 5, what do we want to print? We want the output to be your number is greater than 5. So print your number is greater than 5. So, and that's all it is. So let's say we input 15 like the example is. So run it and enter number. Let's say we enter 15. As soon as we click enter, your number is greater than 5. That's perfect. As soon as we put a number that is less than 5 though, like 3, it's not going to print anything. And how do we make it so it does print something? We need an else statement. So we're going to do that next example. Let me make sure you guys have any errors. Looks like it's good. If you have any errors in typing it into Replit, make sure you just say it in the chat so I can help you guys out. So, all right, we finished the first exercise. Here's the answer to it. We did it together. That's exactly what we did. There you go. Now the next one is, so from the previous exercise, add an else statement to output your number is not greater than 5. So just like here, when I inputted 3, it returned nothing. But I want it to return your number is less than 5. So what do we have to do? We got to put an else statement. So we put an else here, put that, and then number. Oh, oops. Totally forgot about that. Print, you want to print your number is not greater than, now it's less than 5. Because if this statement is false, then it goes to the else and it'll print your number is less than 5. So now we run it, and if we put 15, it'll print your number is greater than 5. It'll go to this if statement right here. The 15 is greater than 5, so print your number is greater than 5. And then it'll completely ignore the else statement because the if statement was true. Now, but if we run it and we do a 3, your number is less than 5 because it'll go to the if statement. 3 is not greater than 5, so it'll ignore this print statement. It'll go to the else statement and it'll print whatever is underneath it. Your number is less than 5. All right, make sure any error. Okay, we're good. Now, so here's the answer to what I basically did. This is exactly what I did. Here, I just use num instead of number, but it's exactly the same thing. The variable name doesn't matter. You can call it num, you can call it number, you can call it cat, dog, it doesn't matter. Okay, now, next one. So from the previous exercise, add an Elif statement to check if the number is equal to 5. So yeah, this statement is perfect only for the fact that if I were to put a 5 in here, it's going to say my number is less than 5. It's going to go to here. Is the number greater than 5? No. So it's not going to print this. And it's just going to go straight to the else and print whatever is underneath it. There's no condition for it. It's just going to print. If it's not greater than 5, then it has to print this statement right here. So it's going to print that it's less than 5. But the thing is, 5 is equal to 5. So how do we put that into it as well? We do an Elif statement. So Elif is exactly the same as else, but you basically are allowed to put a condition in front of it. Here, you can't put a condition in front of an else statement. You can't put else 5 is equal to 5 here. Oops. it's wrong. It's wrong syntax. You can see that little squiggly line over there. So you can else statements are just else and then a colon. That's the syntax for it. So in between the if and the else statement, we want to put an elif statement. So elif. So if the number is greater than 5, so let's say we do 5. If 5 is greater than 5, you want to print this. It's not greater than 5. Then you go to the elif statement. Elif number is equal to 5, then print your number is 5. Else, and if the number wasn't 5, then you'll finally go to the else statement and it'll say that it's less than 5. So, and also the order does matter. If you guys are trying this and you put the elif at the end after the else, it's not going to work. As soon as any type of code hits the else statement, it'll ignore whatever is underneath it. So here, let's say I run this, and let's say I put a 5. It says your number is 5. But if I were to take this else statement and I put it after the if, so like this. So now it's if, and then else, and then elif. There's a squiggly line here because it's invalid syntax. You can't have an elif after an else, because when you run it, it's just wrong syntax. You can't do it like that. You need the elif statement has to be under the if statement, and the else statement has to be the last thing there is. So if we do that and then put it then, that's the right syntax. It has to be if, then elif, then else. That's how it works. So now if you run it, if we put, now it could work for every single number, and we can see if it's greater than 5, less than 5, or equal to 5. So let's say we do 12, your number is greater than 5. Now let's do 8, that's also greater than 5. Let's do 0, your number is less than 5. And let's do exactly 5, your number is 5. There you go. So that's basically the cool thing about if, elif, and else statements. Is pretty, with just code, you can input any number and the computer will just tell you if it's greater than, less than, or equal to 5. Okay, no questions? All right. Now, one last part to the exercise. So this was the answer to basically what we just did together. Again, I just used num here. No difference. You can use num, you can use number. It's the exact same thing. Now, last part. So from the previous exercise, I want to add a compound statement to check if the number is between 0 and 100. So let's say I put 10 in. I wanted to input your number is between 0 and 100, and I want it to also be your number is greater than 5. So we don't have to change anything here. We want this entire statement to be the same, but we also want it to print your number is between 0 and 100. So if I were to print 5, it's going to say your number is 5, but it's also going to have to say your number is between 0 and 100, because 5 is between 0 and 100. So what we basically have to do is a nested if, just like we learned before. So let's put another if above here and say if number is greater than or equal to 0, because it could be 0, and 0 is between 0 and 100, technically. So if number is greater than or equal to 0, and, so you need the and statement, because it has to be between 0 and between, and less than 100. So if number is less than or equal to 100. So let's think about it with like random numbers. 20 is greater than or equal to 0, and 20 is less than or equal to 100. So it's between 0 and 100. That's exactly what we wanted. So if that's true, then print, what does it want us to print? Your number is between 0 and 100. Your number is between 0 and 100. But we need to make this entire thing that we put nested inside of this. So we basically have to indent everything one time. Indent, 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 indent. Oops. Did I take away the P? There you go. Indent and indent. So now if we look at it, let's run through the code together. Let's run through it with a random imaginary number. Let's just we take 12. So if 12 is greater than or equal to 0, and 12 is less than or equal to 100, both of them are right, print your numbers between 0 and 100. That's good, because 12 is between 0 and 100. And we still have to finish everything under the if statement if it's true. So this statement was true with 12. So we basically have to do everything underneath it. So, and everything indented underneath it. So this is indented. Everything basically is indented. So then we go to after we print this, we go to the next if statement. Is 12 greater than 5? It is greater than 5. So print your number is greater than 5. And we do anything that's indented underneath it. But as soon as the if statement is complete, we ignore everything else because we only care about what's indented underneath it. Even though these things over here are indented under this if statement, it doesn't matter. As soon as we hit the next if statement, and if that's true, then we just care about this one line. We won't go to this one and print that the number is also 5, and then we won't go to this one and print that it's also less than 5. So let's run this entire thing. And now let's do like 78. Your number is between 0 and 100, and the number is greater than 5. So let's run it again. Let's do like 2. 2 is also between 0 and 100, and it's less than 5. There you go. You get both of them. Now let's run it again. Let's do exactly 5. Your number is between 0 and 100, and your number is 5. And that's basically all it is. If, elif, else statements. Let me make sure you guys are not getting any errors. Looks good to me. And yeah, so if we look at the next slide, that's where basically what I put the number. Oops, here I guess I changed it to. So here I'm using num, and in the in the code over here, I use number. It's the same exact thing, num number. But yeah, that's exact. Num is, make sure you always put the int because you're trying to cast it. If I take out this int right here, and if I only make it an input and run it, it's gonna give errors because you can't compare like the 9 with quotation marks to the number 0. So if I were to put like 9, it's just gonna say not supported between instances of string and int. It thinks that this 9 over here is a string for some reason. So what do you have to do to change that? You have to put an int, and you have to cast it into an integer. So, and now if we put the 9, so stop it. Now if we put the 9, run, put the 9, now everything works perfectly fine. So make sure you keep that int. And yeah, that's basically all it is for today. Let's go to the summary real quick before I tell you guys the homework. So summary, we learned the comparison operators. Let's go back to that slide. We learned about less than, greater than, equal to. Equal to is two equal signs. Greater than are just the signs that we learn in regular math class. Less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to, and not equal to. So not equal to is just an exclamation mark and then equal to sign. It's kind of weird, but that's just Python syntax. As soon as you memorize it, it'll be really easy. And then we learn if statements. If, and then you put a condition after it. Then you want to print whatever. You indent something and you say print this. And then else is if this is false, go to the else statement and print whatever is indented underneath the else statement. And then the elif statement is between the if and the else. You put them between them, and you can put a condition after them. They're basically like an else. It only follows if the if statement was false. So if this statement here was false, then it'll go to this elif statement, and it'll print. And if this is false, then I'll go to the next elif statement if there is another elif statement. And then if that elif statement is also false, then it'll finally go to the else, and then it'll just print whatever is underneath the else. And it could be even something like this. Something went wrong. And yep, that's that. And then we learn logical operators and or statements. And is if both statements are true, then it will return true. And then if one statement is true, then it'll return true for or statements. So there's that. And there's the example we went over a couple times. And then there's a nested if statement, and it's just two if statements inside one of each other. And then you basically go on only if it's true. So if name is equal to Python, if I were to do, if name was, make sure that it's the same. If name was like Rohit, then that would be false. It'll completely ignore everything that's underneath the if statement because this entire statement was false, and it'll just go straight to the else, and it'll print whatever is here. Name is not Python. So if it was exactly Python, then it'll be like, oh, that's true. So let's go to this one. Is 3 greater than or equal to 2? That's also true. Then print 3 is greater than 2, and it'll just print this right here. So that's basically if statements inside another if statement. And then we did a couple examples. And now I just want to leave you guys with one homework example. You guys can do this anytime you get before next class, and I'll go over at the first slide of next class. So I want you guys to write a program, just simple code, just like I'm writing here, that accepts two integers as input. So here's a little hint. This is how to accept an integer as input one time. You can do it twice by you could label this number 1, and then you can label the next one number 2, and then you could just type all this in, and basically that's how you do it. So that's how you accept two integers as input. The first integer is how many friends Billy has, and the second is how many apples he has. So yeah, so if I were to take this, put this exact same code down here, run it, enter a number 9. That's how many friends. That's how many friends Billy has, 9. And then enter another number. That's how many apples he has, 18. And as soon as I click enter, then I want to check to see if he has enough apples so that each friend gets at least 2. If he does not, say that he has not enough apples. So here, if I were to press enter, he has 18 apples and he has 9 friends. So each friend could get 2 apples. So as soon as I press enter, it should return. So the error here is obviously ignore all this because this does not align with that. So yeah, so if I put 9 and put 18, it should print. I want when I come back, I want you guys to make sure that it prints Billy has enough apples for each of his friends, because 9, he has 9 friends and he has 18 apples, so it should print he has enough. If you were to put 9 and then put 17, then he does not have enough apples because he wants to give 2 apples to each friend, and that's not enough. So it should print Billy does not have enough apples for each of his friends. So there you go. I want you guys to you can work on that right after class, or you can work on it like anytime you have an entire week. If you're stuck, you can ask your parents, or you can just I'll help you guys as soon as next class starts anyway. So I just want you guys to try it by yourself. And there you go. That's the end of today's class. Okay. Okay, so yeah, if any of you guys have questions, you can stay after class and you can or text it in the chat, and I'll just be here for a couple more minutes until everyone is good. But class is over, so if you guys are done, then thank you for attending. Let me just see. Okay. Sorry.
Bye.
Bye-bye.